Climate change is the most pressing global issue of our time. Right now, greenhouse gas emissions have caused irreversible damage to our planet, our only home. Climate change is both a politically and scientifically complex issue. There are also some important decisions regarding climate change coming up within the next couple of months. This video will break through the complexity of the issue and give you what you need to know in order to confidently participate in the discussion. The Earth has been regulating its own temperature for millions of years through a process labeled by the EPA as the Natural Balancing Act. During the start of the Industrial Revolution, this balance was thrown off by the massive emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which by 2013 made up 84% of all greenhouse gases emitted by human activity. The negative effects of climate change are already irreversible, and generations down the line will have to suffer the fatal consequences of our mistakes. You've seen the global impact of the issue, but this is already having a tangible impact closer to home. In the U.S. alone, climate change has had noticeable impacts on the economy in different parts of the country. For instance, precipitation patterns have drastically shifted throughout different regions of the country. On the West Coast, this has caused droughts and forest fires, while the Midwest has experienced significant flooding, damaging agricultural production. Across the nation, storms have also been increasing in severity and frequency. Remember Hurricane Katrina? The result of Katrina was billions of dollars of local and federal government spending to clean up the damage, wrecking budgets and hurting taxpayers in the afflicted regions and across the country. Without addressing the issue, the likelihood of events like these drastically increases. Now that we have seen the detrimental effects of climate change, both globally and domestically, environmentally and economically, here's what you need to know about how the fight to halt climate change has unfolded in the U.S. In December 2015, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change took place in Paris, France, which united 196 developed and developing countries in a unity that had never been seen before. The conference marked the establishment of the Paris Agreement, the first universal and legally binding global climate deal. All 196 countries have pledged to aim to keep global temperatures from rising by more than 2 degrees Celsius by 2100, and developed countries have pledged to collectively send $100 billion annually to developing countries to help reduce emissions and invest capital for adaptation. The U.S. and at least 170 other countries signed the agreement only a few weeks ago in April 2016. To put the U.S.'s commitment to the Paris Agreement into action, President Obama announced the Clean Power Plan, which aims to reduce emissions from coal plants approximately 30% by 2030. This was immediately challenged by a group of Republican-controlled states. Surprisingly, the entire plan's implementation was suspended by the Supreme Court in February, while it was under review by a lower court, before it even got to the Supreme Court. Though the future of the Clean Power Plan will be decided in the Supreme Court next year, the outcomes of the case largely depend on two outside factors. Namely, whether President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, is confirmed by the Senate before the case is heard by the Supreme Court, and who wins the upcoming presidential election. The outcomes of the case are predictable due to the current ideological division of the court and the justices' past voting behaviors. Thus, there are four likely resolutions to the situation. Number 1. The president's nominee is confirmed before the Supreme Court reviews the case. Number 2. The president's nominee is not confirmed before the court reviews the case. The ruling of the climate-friendly lower court stands. Number 3. A Democratic Party candidate wins the presidency and subsequently nominates a liberal, climate-friendly justice. In these three scenarios, the plan will be upheld. In the fourth scenario, if Donald Trump, the Republican Party's presumptive candidate, wins the election and subsequently nominates a conservative, anti-climate change regulation justice to the bench, the plan will not be upheld. But what is it that has been hindering progress in the past? It's the political polarization of this issue between Democrats and Republicans. There are numerous special interest groups, organizations, and corporations who have public and private positions to which politicians want to cater to. The legislature in our country has been deeply divided due to the lack of consensus on what causes climate change, what to do about it, and whether it even exists. The source of the political debate is due to the fact that science is never exact, even though there is overwhelming evidence that climate change exists. Regardless of the polarization of this issue, we need to push the legislature to support anti-climate change measures by voting for anti-climate change candidates and writing to congresswomen and men. It is important to become informed and active citizens in order to spark change. But climate change is more than a political issue. It's more than an economic issue. Climate change is a moral issue. It will have real and devastating consequences for humanity everywhere, especially those most marginalized. During his visit to the United States last year, Pope Francis said, "We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all." At times, the challenge will seem overwhelming, yet we cannot waver in our resolve. The threat of climate change is greatest for the millennial generation, but we are also the ones with the power to change things.